Let's get together. Stop all this fussing and fighting. Let's love one another. You gotta help your mother, help your father, help your brothers, help your sisters, help your neighbors and your friends. We are one people, one nation, one destiny. Everybody, y'all. One people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, yeah. Separated. Now we are freer. That's the way it should be. You gotta help your mother, help your father, help your sister, help your brothers, help your neighbors and your friends. We are one people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, yeah. One people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ooh. We are one people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, yeah. One people, one nation, one destiny. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Do it like this, reggae's another day, y'all. Move, y'all. In the olden days, we were separated. Now we are free, yeah. That's the way it should be. You gotta help your mother, help your father, help your sister, help your brothers, help your neighbors and your friends. We are one people, one nation, one destiny. Sing my song, yeah. One people, one nation, one destiny. Let's get together. Stop all this fussing and fighting. Let's love one another. You gotta help your mother, help your father, help your brothers, help your sisters, help your neighbors and your friends. We are one people, one nation, one destiny. Everybody, y'all. One people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, yeah. We were separated. Now we are free. That's the way it should be. You gotta help your mother, help your father, help your sister, help your brothers, help your neighbors and your friends. We are one people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, yeah. One people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ooh. We are one people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, yeah. One people, one nation, one destiny. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Do like this, reggae's another day, y'all. Move, y'all. Uh-huh.
All right, hey, guess what? Good evening to all of you. We're going to rock and roll. We realize that there is some technical problems, either with the social media platforms or whatever. We're not going to sit and wait until those, whatever the problems are resolved. But I do see some of your comments here. Deborah Sharona Lynch. By the way, that's a nice middle name, Sharona. I don't know if your folks are originally from the quarantine. What comes close to that name is Sheriga, Sheriga crab. So I don't know if your dad or your mom or something grew up in the crab era. And I say that with the best of respect as it pertains to your name and comparing it to Sheriga. Sharona, Sharona, or Sharona, I got you. Sharona. Maybe your folks just watched a lot of movies at Wim Cinema. Indian movies, and so the name Sharona, I got you. All right, but some other folks can argue, and rightly so, that the name is not just probably confined to an Indian name or a crab name, and it doesn't mean that people who have crab names have crab mentality. Let me be quiet before I get myself into trouble, especially since I'm just complimenting someone on a unique middle name. Good evening to all of you. Afraz Osman, we see Wendy Emmanuel, all the beautiful people listening from wherever you are listening. We're always appreciative of your time, the time that you take to watch these shows, and especially here on 107.1 FM. Sorry about that. Yeah, I just want to thank you for always taking that time out to be with us. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to all of us here at 107.1 FM. And I'm sure that I speak also on behalf of the other folks that you guys do watch. The Gat Kadaki, Dr. David Hines, Sharon Duncan, uh, Dr. David Hines, and others who have their social media platform as well, that we are really truly appreciative of your time. I know a lot of you are excited, especially about what's going on. Not just excited, you are concerned, deeply concerned about the happenings in Guyana, because a lot of corruption happening, and we see it every single day. It's so unfortunate that such a beautiful country, and we have to go through that sort of gross mismanagement from a political level. Now, let me welcome some of our new listeners, and let me welcome some of the ones who don't like to hear the truth. I haven't seen any bumps start raising, but and I know some of you are inboxing me quietly too. I'm on the air, but thank you. I know you're concerned. You're not getting any notification at all, but we are not too bothered. Like I've said about the notification, we have a show to do. We will run our show. We don't necessarily run our shows uh, because of numbers. We like the numbers, yes, but even if we have one is still a listening audience, and so uh, we wait until Facebook or whomever or wherever the problem is coming from will be fixed. Um, I notice Afras Good Usman is saying real thing, no notifications. Facebook at the BS again, and as you know, BS, what BS stands for, Burby School, short BS, Burby School, right? All right, so we're gonna rock and roll with tonight's program. I notice Miss Simon is saying here, forced to look at Politics 101 on YouTube. Facebook was not cooperating. And in fact, Facebook is not cooperating. But what do we do when people don't cooperate? We find other avenues in order to get our information out, and it wouldn't hold us back here this evening. Later on, we will be joined by attorney at law Shellen Washington. She is no stranger to you guys. I invited Miss Washington this evening to get her legal side of things on what transpired today at the Caribbean Court of Justice. As you know, the appeal was heard today. Lots of gymnastics coming from the PPP side. They were confused. It seems as though they were caught off guard. They didn't really expect some of the fair questions, direct questions about real law. And Anil and the others and Mendez and these guys try to wiggle their way out of things. But the listening audience certainly got a different view and walked away with the impression that those guys are really part of the Skeng Gang. And some of you know the Skeng Gang, people call them the Dunstogs and all these different things. But I'm an old man now. I don't want to get involved in who's Dunstogs and Skeng Gang. Except for tonight, I would say that if ever in the future you're going to be talking about the Skeng Gang, talk about the battery of lawyers who represented the PPP today. They more come across like the Skeng Gang, the Dunstogs, so to speak. All right, on the issue of legal matters, I'll just sit back and wait until our attorney join us because I want you guys to get a better understanding from a legal standpoint. I'm no lawyer, and I'm not going to attempt to break things down legally for you. I can attempt, but I'm not, other than the fact to tell you guys that I suspect, and again, I know for those of you who watched earlier when I carried the CCJ's hearing, that I am convinced that the PPP will lose this case, and that the judges, the justices want, and they, fair enough, elections matters should be, especially petitions, ought to be treated with some degree or a great degree of urgency. We're not seeing that, and again, I don't want to be repetitive, but the PPP is really afraid of the elections petitions, and all of you by now you should know why. I'm glad to see that J.R. Crawford is with us. J.R. Crawford is with us. Good evening, J.R. J.R. finally got some lights back at Alnis Village. Maybe we should have Mr. Crawford on to talk about what is happening in Alnis Village and what is perceived to be spite coming from the PPP regime. We want to hear about that. If you guys want to hear from J.R. Crawford in a couple of minutes, I oftentimes ask your permission before we have certain guests on. And J.R. J.R. Crawford is no stranger right here. He has been with us all throughout the elections and before elections, and his opinions, lots of his opinions. We can see what happened with his opinions, right? Really, really good opinions. He is a CFAR man, but in Guyana, on the current team, we say like he's a Obia man. He knows these things. So, Mr. Crawford, if he's available, I will have our operator Lemon to bring Mr. Crawford on for a few minutes as we also await the arrival of the attorney at law, Shellen Thomas. She is going to be with us. But let's see what's going through your minds and before that, they have, speaking of the Dunstog and this Ken gang, I want you to look out for this guy. He is supposed to be a policeman, doesn't conduct himself like a policeman at all, is basically part of the Ken gang Dunstog, going out doing the PPP's bidding. I'll give you his name shortly, but he is definitely part of the Dunstog. And the way he behaves, no one wants a policeman or a policewoman to behave in the manner that this guy behaves. His name is he goes by Siphon Don on Facebook. Siphon Don. That's the name he goes by on Facebook. He's part of the Dunstog crew. And so this evening we gave him the Dunstog Crew Award. And let us have our operator just give this Dunstog, who is part of the Guyana Police Force, our award because he was recently promoted. And these are not the kind of folks we need in the Guyana Police Force at all. I'll explain probably tomorrow a little more about this Dunstog's behavior. His Facebook name is Siphon Don. If you probably go, you'll get a better understanding as to what I'm talking about. But let's give him the national award right here on 107.1 FM. All right, I'm glad you're able to witness the Dunstog Award. We are joined by a lawyer, but before we get to our lawyer, I'm sorry that she caught me like this with regards to giving out an award to a Dunstog. Good evening to you, attorney at law. How are you?
Hi, good evening, Mark. I am well. How's yourself?
Great, thank you. You'd agree that anybody in any profession, especially a police officer and so forth, should conduct themselves in at least a respectable manner because they're there to protect and serve. As an attorney, or even those who are not attorney, expect better from our cops, don't we?
Oh, absolutely, Mark. There's a certain code of conduct that goes with every profession, or I would say ethical obligations, or otherwise it goes with every single profession, whether it be in Ghana or any other part of the world. There's certain expectations. So I would certainly expect a police officer to conduct himself in a certain manner.
Absolutely. Any police officer ought to do just that. But let's move away from, as I described him, as part of the Skeng Gang. I know you probably don't even know what is Skeng Gang. You're going to get off. You're going to ask your kids. Maybe your kids don't know, your colleagues. What is a Skeng Gang? Ben Shap talking about a Skeng Gang and the Dunstog crew and all these different things. But I know you don't want to get involved with those things, but that's okay. Let's take a quick break so that people can get to know who you are. Well, they should. Most of them by now should know that you're our attorney right here, in-house attorney, who come and break things down legally for us. But you also have your practice in Brooklyn. Your office is located in Brooklyn. We'd want people to know who you are, where your office is located and how they should and can get in touch with you. We'll be right back.
So this is attorney Shellen Washington, owner and founder of the Washington law firm located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
All right, welcome back. With us this evening, Attorney Shalon Washington. I just want to get a quick opinion from her with regards to the hearing at the CCJ. The PPP has decided to appeal an elections petition, something that came as a surprise to many people because it is the PPP who were complaining. They were saying that they want an elections petition. They were saying that the coalition was afraid of showing their SOPs. They were saying that the coalition actually rigged the elections. That's according to the PPP and the PPP crew. But here it is that they have an opportunity to have those elections petitions be heard in the court. They're the ones who are fighting against it. They don't want it to be heard. They don't want to show their SOPs. They don't want the elections petition. Attorney at law, before we get right into that, how are you doing? How's your practice? You do divorce, right? You do a lot of things.
Yes, I do. Thanks for asking, Mark. I wanted to send special thank you to all of your viewers who've been supporting me. There are so many people that they come and they support the practice, and they often mention Mark Benchcom. You have a lot of very loyal listeners. A lot of the people, they come and they say, you know what, attorney, I watch the Mark Benchcom show every single night. I like to keep abreast with what's happening in Guyana, and he keeps me really informed. And when I'm watching the show, I see a commercial and I make sure I take a note of the number. So I've been being supported really well by a lot of your listeners. They're calling and they're using my services, and I want to thank all of you who are paying attention to the Mark Benchcom show, and you're paying attention to all the social and political issues that are affecting Guyana. And thank you also for paying attention to my commercial, and thanks to all of you who have been very loyal and supportive. I've been getting a lot of calls as a result of Mark Benchcom show. So special thanks to Mark also, and thanks to all of his loyal listeners again. The practice is doing very well. As the commercial said, I'm located on Utica Avenue in Brooklyn. Okay, and a lot of times people also call about issues that might be, affecting them in multiple jurisdictions. So it might be something that crossover between here and Guyana. So, if any of you listening and there's any such issue, sometimes people need power of attorney that's effective. You have to execute it here and it's effective in Guyana. So any type of issue that might affect more than one jurisdiction, you could let us know. Give us a call.
More than one jurisdiction, indeed. I have someone who might want to have you as a client, that you may want to have as a client. I'm not sure how much you will get paid by this guy. He may probably have a case. The PPP went into his village, and all the lights cut off, and these guys were in darkness for days. J.R. Crawford. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Miss Shalon.
Hi, good evening. Nice meeting you.
We're still in darkness, Mark.
Explain to us. Good night and welcome to the show. We are going to deal with the CCJ matter just shortly. But what is happening at Alnis Village and other villages, I suspect, on the quarantine, but mainly Alnis Village? They went in there, they cut the lights off, and what's happening? And what's the reason, sir?
Well, no reason has been given, but I saw them going up the pole, I think, last Wednesday. And a stretch about 300 to 400 meters, the lights are out on the public road. And, the lights are working fine. There were no outages, no shortages or anything. Just turned it off. And I do suspect it's because of my speaking out against their behavior that's the reason.
So they just went into Alnis. Alnis is currently in darkness. They just climbed the pole.
Yeah, the place is totally dark out there, and we are on a turn right in front of your home there.
Yeah.
That's where the blackout started.
No, you gone and tell them people where I have a house on the quarantine. Thanks, JR. Thank you so much for doing that. But Miss Washington, you heard the side of Mr. J.R. Crawford, whose dad was a senior counsel. I'm not sure if you heard much of the late Marcel Crawford, senior counsel Marcel Crawford, practiced for so many years under quarantine. I knew him as a little boy, and sometimes it was pleasant meeting him, and sometimes it wasn't pleasant at all, especially when he raised his hand and say, "Hey," as little boys, we never really wanted to take good advice. But Mr. Marcel Crawford, the senior counsel, late Marcel Crawford, was a very, very good man and a stern guy as well in the village, a leader out there on the quarantine and throughout Guyana. But you heard what J.R. Crawford just said as it pertains to the vindictiveness of the PPP regime, cutting off lights and so forth. Your take, please.
I think it's really unfortunate if that is the conduct of the political party which is in power and has been installed. If that is correct, if what you're saying is true, because I mean, I have no way of verifying, but it's based on suspicions, and if those suspicions could be founded on proper evidence, and that's the conduct that they're engaging in, that type of oppression against citizens speaking up, then it's very, very unfortunate. It's very despicable. That's the type of conduct we should not tolerate as Guyanese, and I would encourage Guyanese to speak up against that type of oppression. It's a democracy, or we're supposed to have a democracy. Therefore, you are supposed to, or you're entitled to, freedom of expression. And if, as a result of you expressing your political views, it is causing that type of oppression that is affecting so many people in your village, I think it's very despicable. I think it's also unfortunate that there's not sufficient remedies in place to take actions against a political party in Guyana who would take such drastic measures against the citizens, because it's not much that you could do legally in terms of trying to sue the government for that type of behavior or that type of oppression. The laws doesn't really permit in Guyana to really sue the government or the party in power. There's something called immunity, and I think most jurisdictions have some form of immunity from being able to initiate suit against the person in power, the political party, or members of parliament. But I'm not expert on political or constitutional law in Guyana, but just my basic knowledge of what the law entails, it would be difficult to take legal remedies against the political party.
And citizens should. It's unfortunate that a lot of these people, you cannot sue them for some of the things or for their conducts in parliament or even when they're in office. If I have my way, I'll just strip them of all immunities. People should be held accountable. Unfortunately, in Guyana, you have people, whoever sits there as the president, just cannot be charged or cannot be held responsible for anything. Unlike what we see maybe in the United States and other places, that the citizens hold these people accountable for things. Unfortunately, like I've said, in Guyana, it's not the same. But I recall for all those years, the PPP was campaigning and they were insulting the PNC supporters and calling the Constitution, Bornham's Constitution, a dictator constitution, all manner of things. But when they got into office in 1992, they never changed anything. They're enjoying the sweetness, the very things that they condemn. They're enjoying it, and they are just not going to change it. But hopefully we'll have them out of office very soon. Mr. Crawford, what is your take? What are the people in the village saying? They're just sitting down and accepting this sort of blackout and this vindictiveness from the PPP regime, sir?
I haven't heard much from, the common folks. I've spoken to some of the NDC folks, and they're looking into it. I want to make this point, as Ms. Washington was saying, there is certain verification that's needed. Back in 2011, when my brother was campaigning against the current PPP government.
And just to stick a pin, in case Ms. Washington doesn't know, his brother is Ryan Crawford. Yeah.
I know who Ryan Crawford is. At least I know his name, the attorney.
And he has a very popular middle name, but we're not gonna use that middle name.
I
Right?
know
Go ahead.
where that middle name came from.
Thank you. You're aware of its origin.
Yes.
When he was campaigning for the coalition or the AFC back then, because of him speaking out, they stopped the lights when they were installing the lights about 300 yards west of us. And, it goes to show you, here is it 11 years later, because I have become such a vocal person, this is what is meted out. And I mean, they'll do whatever they want to do, but it won't stop me from being who I am. And, at the end of the day, I don't serve man, I serve God. So I'm not afraid of what they want to do or how much they can try to oppress. In the end, payback will be a bitch.
Yeah. Thank
I
you.
mean,
Thank you so much. Go ahead, attorney.
Based on what Mr. J.R. Crawford is saying, there seems to be some sort of history or a pattern on the part of the opposition of taking this type of drastic remedy against people for whatever it is, whatever political position they decide to take. Because if it has happened in the past and you're saying that it's a possibility that it's the same thing that is happening now, clearly there's circumstantial evidence before us that this might be something they're engaging in, and this is a drastic form of oppression. It's a form of oppression and it shouldn't be. And I believe the people of Guyana need to stand up against this sort of conduct, speak up about it, speak up against it. Don't just sit quietly and allow this type of oppression to continue. And I think what you're doing tonight is very good because you're speaking up about it. You're letting them know that you're aware that this is what they're doing, because there's sufficient amount of circumstantial evidence to prove that they have taken this type of measures before in the past and they're doing it again.
The vindictiveness indeed. And I also know that you, attorney, will be so happy to hear that Mr. J.R. Crawford says that he doesn't he's not afraid of man. He's a believer of God because Ms. Shellen Washington is also a pastor, not just an attorney, but you're also a pastor. I just thought I'd let our listeners know that. But indeed, the PPP regime do have a history of being vindictive. They've been very vindictive for the 23 plus years they've been in office. They've been squatting there, and now they're back squatting again. They're even more vindictive this time around. However, what is stopping their tracks is basically these sort of shows on social media. It is really, really stopping them. Had it not been for these sort of shows, they would have probably been taking people and executing people left, right, and center. We know what happened in those dark days where hundreds of young people have been slaughtered by either police extrajudicial killings or phantom squads, death squads that were connected to the PPP. We see signs of those things returning. We see a lot of drug planes. We see a lot of drug busts. Thousands upon thousands of kilos of cocaine being shipped out of the country. We're seeing these things every single day. But getting back to the discrimination, J.R. Crawford is quite familiar, and some of our listeners, but this village here on the quarantine called Liverpool, Member of Parliament Dinesh and GAU representative on the quarantine, Mr. Ernie Park, along with Basdir, just discuss this particular matter. This is an actual street where people have to walk to go home. In Liverpool Village, predominantly persons of African descent, and the discrimination is pretty obvious. They have been ignoring these things. I know there are a lot of our brothers and sisters who live in predominantly Indian villages can also say the same, that they too are being ignored. But the manner in which, especially the regime, is being vindictive towards persons of African descent is not the same when they ignore other villages. It seems as though the PPP has this vengeance against persons of African descent. Let's have our operator show a quick video before we continue.
Morning.
So, J.R. Crawford, you are quite familiar with that area. Liverpool, you mentioned earlier about the vindictiveness of the PPP regime. Before I give you a minute to comment on not just the state of that road at Liverpool, there are roads at Alice, there are roads at Lancaster, there are roads at Manchester Village, there are roads at Ulverston. My gosh, I know you want to comment about that, but before, let me just remind people about that vindictive PPP regime. Once they were doing people's parapets and weeding and cleaning the trenches and so forth. And what they did, they deliberately left a space in front where Freddie Kissoon's house is. The same Freddie Kissoon who is now barking for the PPP and biting people for the PPP every single day. And when the PPP was so vindictive to Freddie Kissoon, lots of us went out on the side of Freddie and we protested against that vindictiveness. But then again, people got to live, people got to survive, people got to eat. Some people don't care how they eat and how they survive. Freddie is now more pro PPP than anything else. Mr. Crawford, you want to talk about these villages, these so-called roads?
Mark, we are seeing selective behavior when it comes to providing services. And the little service that they'll come into certain NDCs, it's substandard, it's not up to date, they're not showing respect or meeting with the leaders of the community to get an idea what is needed and, having inclusionary behavior. That street actually was going to do half of the street. Not until a few residents came out with some councillors and they got the regional chairman involved that they are going to do the complete street. There are other streets that have been in despicable state that they are not going to touch because they're not providing the services in this particular NDC that I know of. The same goes for the drainage in this area. The excavator that was supposed to be in this NDC has been relocated about 5 to 6 months now. We don't have equipment here to provide services for the taxpayers. So here it sees that, the PPP, they are doing things in their stronghold, and who hasn't supported this party, they are left behind, or they're getting, substantive work being, laid out here. And we're not seeing something that's being honest. They're talking about one guy, but here you're seeing selective behavior, and the discrimination is blatant. And this is something that we as a people have to come together and you stand up against. We cannot have this kind of behavior in the 21st century. And it's really bad for social cohesion because you keep putting people against each other because they're looking at another area, seeing development, and they're not getting it. And it's not good for our country.
Certainly not good for our country, not good for development. Good evening, those of you who are now joining us on 107.1 FM. We're talking about the vindictiveness of the PPP regime and the discriminatory practices throughout the country. And a lot of PPP supporters are also feeling the blunt of that discrimination and vindictiveness. But we see it, we see the spitefulness and the vindictiveness also heavily in communities that are African Guyanese. Take, for example, out in Linden, this is what the PPP did. Absolutely. So, just evidence. I'm sure that they would not go into certain particular area or Monrepo at Auntie who sells Polori and break down Auntie's house just like that. They wouldn't do it, but they feel comfortable just barging into Linden and just do that. Maybe they feel comfortable going into areas like Belladrum maybe Liverpool, Lancaster, and do these sort of things. And that's the sort of discrimination that we're talking about. Blatant racial discrimination by this installed PPP regime. I know, attorney, we want to touch on the CCJ hearing. I'm certain that maybe you had some time and you took some time to watch the hearing. Let us get your take on what you've heard today from the CCJ.
Well, actually, Mark, I just heard a part of what is happening, and from what I was understanding, it looks, but we're not too sure, that they might be at an outcome that is favorable to the coalition. Is that the CCJ may hold that the Court of Appeal in Guyana has jurisdiction to hear the petition, but I'm not too sure, because we don't know for sure that that's going to be the outcome, as from what I understand. At this point, we're just waiting for the final decision. But from what I understand, it's just the belief, or there's the inclination that is going to be favorable to the PPP.
You've been
I'm
favorable.
sorry, PPP coalition. I'm sorry. We don't want that at all.
Yeah, you've been practicing for quite some time, and you know, attorney, that there are times when judges give the impression that a case is going in your favor, or a defense lawyer or a lawyer's favor, only to get the shock at the end. You're aware of that too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've seen that so many times. Judges, because of maybe because of what the result, if they give the impression as what's going to happen, indeed, people are going to, might maybe start going out on the streets and start rioting. And sometimes they don't want to have people get the idea of what actually is going to happen. So sometimes they give a false hope that, we're going to rule in your favor. I mean, I've seen that happen so many times in court, where the judges give the impression that, listen, we're going to give a favorable decision on your part, because they asked the questions which seem to lead to the one conclusion, but in the end, it ends up being something totally different from what you expect it to be. So I wouldn't be surprised at all, given the history of the CCJ. I wouldn't encourage people to be too confident in holding their breath and thinking, okay, this is going to be a favorable result for the coalition, and then the Court of Appeal is going to hear the petition and make a decision. I would not.
But the signs got you. The signs are there, though, that the high possibility that the coalition may end up winning this case, which I do believe that they should. But I'll be surprised if there's a swing in this whole elections petitions hearing there today. I tuned out before the conclusion, but they are to return for a final decision.
Right, that's what I understand. They're going to return, and I think Justice Sanders was absent today, so I'm not sure if his presence is going to be mandatory in coming to a conclusion on this whole matter. So, yeah, I don't expect there to be a swing, like you said. It's none of us are expecting that. I think most of the viewers, most of the listeners who are here tonight are expecting to have a favorable decision handed down in favor of the coalition and not the PPP. But like I said, we just have to wait and see, because we've seen this so many times when a judge acts as if, or judges act as if, oh, we're listening to you, we're hearing you, and chances are we're going to give a decision in your favor, and then it comes out the opposite way. So we just have to hope, and
or to give this impression that they are being tough on a particular side, just for a public kind of like false impression that I'm being tough on you, Attorney Shallon. Let me ask you, or Crawford, let me ask you some questions here. And then the questions are probably premeditated to be tough, to give this impression that I'm not on their side.
Exactly. And the thing is too, Mark, what people need to understand about any court of appeal, or any court that is empaneled with at least 2 or 3 judges, Those judges, their function really is to try to get to the bottom of the question that is asked. Because, as you know, if you approach the court, you're asking a legal question to the court, and the court's obligated to answer that question based on the law. So what happens when you approach a court that is impaneled with 2, 3, or 4 judges? Most of the cases, it's 3 judges. The Court of Appeal here, 3 judges, except for the Supreme Court in this country. The Supreme Court has several justices, but the Court of Appeal in the state of New York, it's also impaneled with 3 judges. And the function of those judges, or their purpose, is to ask questions, to understand the issue, to understand the question that you're asking them, and then to come to a conclusion based on all the facts and all the evidence. And a lot of times they ask questions, and asking of a question is not anything to allude that because I'm asking you a question, that means I'm siding with you. It's just a matter of just asking to understand, like, what is the issue, and can we get to a conclusion of this issue favorable, or in your favor, or in your adversary favor. We don't know, but we're asking questions to understand. And sometimes it could be just they're showing that, like, we're interested in what you're asking, but sometimes they already have a conclusion. And in this case, we're hoping that they didn't already had a conclusion, but they're going to conclude based on the law, based on the Constitution of Ghana, based on their understanding of the legal question that was asked to them.
Yeah, we were all hoping that their conclusion would have been a favorable one to the people of Guyana, a favorable one to democracy. And we didn't see that. And I'm speaking of those elections petitions cases that went in front of them, and we saw the obvious bias in a lot of those judges, justices. But tonight is not the night. I know a lot of our listeners and viewers recall those individuals, some of whom are sitting there tonight, early in the case, sorry. Mr. Crawford, you have been in the House for practically all your life, your dad being a lawyer and one of the best in the country. I don't know. Sometimes I get the impression that you think that you're a lawyer, Mr. Crawford. But what is your take, having watched today's proceedings? I'm assuming that you watched it. What is your take on what you saw, sir?
I am very optimistic that the people of Guyana would get to a decision that would affect them positively, and the petition would be heard. This, yes, we have seen the CCJ, dance around on some cases prior to that, but I'm seeing a different makeup, and it's much more positive. And with the democracy on the line today, we're hoping that the judges come back with a fair decision to respect the citizens of Guyana, so they will have the truth of what happened in 2020, regardless of what becomes the outcome.
Regardless of that, indeed, I have another question for attorney here, but I'm smiling because of a particular situation. I know how judges operate, and for good reasons. I do know how judges operate, and maybe not so good reason as well. But I recall being in front of a particular judge during a trumped-up treason charge. And I was so optimistic that everything was going so fine. Everything, that the judge is going to accept the no-case submission. The questions were nice. They were favorable. And lo and behold, the judge said that the case will go to the jury. My question is, what happened? My facial expression changed. Just like, what the hell just happened there? This judge ruled against. Are you serious? So I'm saying this because that is how cases go. You feel all good. You sit there. You may be in the dock. You may be somewhere, wherever you are, and you're feeling all optimistic that you're going to walk out of here a free man, a free woman, whatever. And then when the judge just pull that U-turn on you, that swing bowler, a judge did that on that trumped up treason charges. God bless his soul. He's now dead. He happens to be a relative of mine, and he tried my case. We found out that we were relative probably after, and he knew that we were relative. But anyways, this is not about me. It's about our show. It's about our guests and our listeners. I just thought I share that personal view in terms of building your hopes up when judges seem to be asking questions to individuals, especially some of the questions that were posed to Anil today. Anil couldn't answer those questions. He wiggled, all manner of things, and it was very embarrassing. Anil, it was very embarrassing. Miss Washington, cases such as elections petitions ought to be heard expeditiously because they are important. They cannot be lingering in the court for 2 years, 3 years. In the case of the 1997 elections petition, it was there for over 4 years until the judge ruled that the elections was void. What is your take on these elections petitions being lingering in the court?
Right. I think election petitions, like you said, they ought to be heard in an expeditious manner. One of the reasons are, if somebody's contesting the validity of any election, if you allow the persons who win to sit in office while the election petition is being contested, you're essentially saying, we agree that you should sit and you're legally entitled to sit there as the president of the country while we take many years to decide. And I think that's facially wrong because that's how we ended up having the first female president who was not the first female president in Guyana. It shouldn't even be recorded in our history book as she ever being the first president, because if afterwards you're going to rule that the election is void, several years pass by, a whole term passed by before that decision could come down. And then you allow a legal error to go by. That's an error of law. It's an error to have something lingering for so many years in the court when judges could quickly deal with those petitions. And it's for the better of the whole society because we want to have a true democracy. And I believe that if this is an issue, then maybe there should be a special panel, a special courts, who specialize in just dealing with constitutional issues, and election issues should be set up in Guyana. Because if this is going to be the attitude of the court to have this type of case linger, and I think most times when you see a case is lingering like that, there's more to it other than it being just the court is too busy or the calendar is too crowded. It might be other issues involved there, like politically motivated. And, people ought to understand that judges has their own personal bias, just like everybody else. We know that judges are supposed to dispense of the law without fear or favor. That's one of the things that they agree to when they sit on a bench. But we also know that doesn't really happen. Every one of us have personal biases, and a lot of times judges allow those personal preferences and biases to rule, which should not be, because a judge is basically supposed to rule based on the law and the facts. They're arbiter of facts and law, whereas a juror could only decide based on factual situation. A judge has the ability to determine both. And if you're sitting on a bench and allowing a petition to linger for such a long time, I think that judge ought to, or the people in Guyana ought to rethink who they're allowing to sit on those benches. I know the people in Guyana doesn't have the ability to appoint judges, but it's a political appointment. In the United States, judges are elected, or in some cases they're appointed. So the people do have the ability to determine who they want to sit on a bench as a judge. Whereas in Guyana, we don't have such luxury in Guyana. The judges are just hand selected. They're picked by whoever is in political party, whoever is the leader, whoever is in power, and they're appointed to those benches. And the people of Guyana really have no opportunity to object to who sits on the Court of Appeal or in the High Court in Guyana.
Absolutely. All right. If you're now joining us, attorney at law, Shellen Washington, and we have J.R. Crawford with us. Mr. Crawford, your take on these elections petitions being lingering or are lingering in the courts, and the fact that the PPP is so aggressive going after any hearing of those elections petitions, something contrary to what they were saying during the course of the aftermath of the 2020 elections. They were calling for elections petitions. They were saying that the SOPs for the coalition were rigged, questionable, all manner of things. But yet now they have that opportunity to go to court and let us examine everything. They're the ones who are running from it. Let us get your take, whether you share the same view that the PPP, they're the ones who are running from the elections petitions for obvious reasons. In my opinion, they know that they have rigged the elections. I don't know, what is your take on that, sir?
Mark, anytime you have an election petition being brought about, my thing is that should take precedence over the other matters sitting in the courts, and it should be handled ASAP, because you're having people's voices that are being suppressed. Do you have doubts? You have people's lives who's going to be interrupted. And I was always of the fact, or the belief, that once there was an election petition back in 2020, it should have been heard in 2020. And I don't see no reason for it to be lingering 2, 3, 4, 5 years. It's a waste of time, because the party that is there, and once the loss comes out there and saying that they are not supposed to be in office, what happens when you sit there for 2, 3 years?
And that's the same point Attorney Washington made, because in the case of the 1997 elections petition, Janet Jagan was sworn in under heavy questionable circumstances. She threw a court order that was served on her. They locked the marshals, about 3 of them. They insulted, they assaulted the marshals and so forth. And Janet Jagan was actually served with that court order. But what she did, she threw it over her shoulders with the help of Dudnath Singh, who was then the Attorney General, with the help of the very, very senior persons of the Guyana judiciary. So we saw the corruption there and the manipulation of our constitution and the disrespect of the rule of law and every manner of thing. Yet Janet Jagan was installed there as the president of Guyana. In any other part of the world, that would have, in any other democratic part of the world, that would have been omitted from our records book, because legally and technically, Janet Jagan was never the president of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. I am not the one who's saying that. The court ruled that the elections were vitiated. And by virtue of that, all records should have been struck out, indicating that Janet Jagan was president for that short period. Because as you know, there was again some manipulation of the Constitution, where Sam Hines, who was the acting president, had to step down and put Janet Jagan up front, and all manner of jiggery-pokery when the Constitution doesn't say that at all. And I say this to remind people that the PPP has a history of walking all over anything that has to do with the rule of law, decency, or constitutional rights of citizens. They just don't give a damn. However, from 1997 or the latter part of 1997 until the court ruled 4 years after that the elections were vitiated. In fact, the judge who made that ruling was Claudette Singh, our good friend who sits there at as chairman of the Guyana Elections Commission. What happens to Jack Dio's years in office and all of the policies and everything, the laws that were passed and so forth? Those things should have been addressed. But Attorney, I agree with you, they were not addressed, but maybe it's because of the cowboy nature of doing things in Guyana. Anything else that's going through your mind, Attorney at Law, as it pertains to the CCJ and the fact that it's obvious that the PPP is trying to not have these petitions heard? Anything ringing through your mind about the reason maybe why you think they don't want it to be heard?
I think the reason is obvious. The PPP does not want the truth to come to light, because I believe if you know the truth and you know that you weren't engaged in any type of fraud or illegal activity, or you try to control the election, the outcome of the election, why would you be in such opposition to somebody going the legal route to get to the bottom. Because if they believe they're going to be vindicated, then there will be no reason to so vigorously fight to prevent the petition from going before the court, because they will be confident that if it goes before the court, them knowing that they had done the right thing, that the outcome would be favorable. The truth would come to light. So I think with their actions, it's giving, that they believe that whatever they did is going to come to light, and that's what they're trying to prevent. And I'm glad Mark mentioned the rule of law earlier, because in law school they teach us about the rule of law, but then you get out of school and you see the operation of the government and the court, and you realize there's no rule of law in Ghana. There's no separation of powers, as we would refer to it. The separation of power would refer to the judicial arm of the government, which is the court system. And then you have the executive arm, which is the president, the prime minister, and the cabinet. And they function as two separate and distinct bodies. And one doesn't influence the other. The court makes the law, they rule. The legislative arm, they implement statutes and laws. But the court is the one who interpret those statutes and law. And when you see, as in this instance, the government is trying to influence the law, they're trying to influence the outcome of it. They're trying to avert or to thwart the course of justice. It becomes questionable as whether or not Guyana is truly a country that recognizes the rule of law and allow for the separation of powers. If they allow truly, respect the rule of law and truly, acknowledge that there must be a separation of power, Guyana would function much more effectively, and we will be in a better position to stamp out a lot of the corruption if the executive arm would stay out of the way and allow the court to do its job. I don't understand why Anil Singh would even try to prevent the petition from going before the court. Allow the Court of Appeal to hear the petition, allow the Court of Appeal to make its decision, allow things to go the legal route, and then allow the truth to come out, allow the people of Guyana to know the truth. If you know the truth sets you free. So if they know the truth, allow the truth to come forward and allow for the petition to go before the Court of Appeal. I'm not understanding why would Anil believe that the Court of Appeal does not have jurisdiction when the Court of Appeal is the highest court in Guyana outside of the CCJ. The Court of Appeal is the one with the jurisdiction to hear all sorts of cases. So I'm not sure. Mark?
A lot of us are really not sure, but we understand the nature of the beast. We understand how the PPP operates. Crawford, you want to take a bite at that, please?
Mark, one of the things that I wondered was, with our election petitions, and they're being dragged on here, why the United Nations never steps in to assist and making sure that the courts were able to do their job and democracy was preserved. Why, I don't know. Two, when you see you have the interference of government with the judiciary, it's a clear sign of corruption, and that in itself will pull the whole country backwards. And as a nation, we have to learn to come together for the betterment and the growth of a country. But in Guyana's case, we are too divided, and we're too much entrenched in this racial suppression that we are willing to give up our fundamental rights and comfort just to be spiteful. If we as a nation learn to embrace the law instead of embracing each other because of hair texture or religion, we will be a lot better as a nation. We are not looking past, our own satisfaction and set up a future for our children, or for us to have a better presentation to the international world as a people that stand for justice and freedom and democracy. We are more self-absorbed in personal gain and suppression and all these dirty behaviors. And these are things that we need to move away from. And going back to a petition, once a petition is filed, and it's been dragged on. Like I said before, it's suppressing the voices of the people. It's showing the rest of the world that we do business with that we are not a group of people who adhere to the law or who wants clarity. We're always in this power struggle business. And the PP has clearly shown that as much as they're telling their supporters that they have won the election, they're suppressing the process to prove if they have won or lost. And once you're suppressing the process, it means that you have something to hide. And I don't know when the followers of the PPP party are going to understand that if your leaders are not wanting to put clarity up front, there are much more in the matter that they don't want you to know about. And if the government is deemed legal, then let it be as it is. But if there are doubts, then we must address these things early so we can have a country that is moving forward together instead of a bit and pieces at a time.
I think it's. I think you're right, Mr. Jared Crawford. I think if the people who are in power would allow for the rule of law, allow for the course of justice to take its place, its rightful place, I think Guyana would be a better place, because everyone is looking, and I think what we as Guyanese should learn to do is to put aside our differences based on race and realize that Guyana is our country. It's not the PPP country. It's not the coalition country. It's our country. And if we would learn how as a nation, as a people, regardless of who we are, whether we are, Afro-Guyanese or Indo-Guyanese, if we should learn as a people how to come together and to fix our own country, to stand up against injustice, stand up against whoever is there and is not doing justice, I think our country would be a better place for all of us. This is not an issue that anybody should take lightly, that the government does not want for the rule of law to take its rightful place. The government should step back and allow this case to go to the Court of Appeal, allow for it to be heard, allow for the truth to come out. Whatever the truth is, let the truth be revealed. Let the people of Guyana know what the truth is. And then that will help people. That will help to put whatever trouble or whatever concern that they might have regarding the current government who is in power. That will help to put their worries to rest, because they will know the truth. Whether it be that the elections was rigged or what otherwise, they will know, the truth will come out. And I think this is something that all of us as Guyanese need to be concerned about. This is not a Afro-Guyanese fight. This is not, it shouldn't be that way. It should be a Guyanese fight. We should want democracy. We should want to see our people come together and to do what is right and to see for a better Guyana. We all want a better Guyana. I grew up in a Guyana where most of what I saw was the PPP in power. I was very young when the instance that we spoke about with Janet Jagan, she threw the petition behind her back. We don't want to see this. And in this age where social media is taking the forefront of everything and things are being exposed, we want to see everything that is corrupt. We want to see all of the things that has been done in the past. We want to see exposed now. And we want to see Guyana cleaned up. We want to see a better Guyana for the future generations to come. I've always heard my parents thinking that Guyana would become better. My father has departed this world. My mother is still here. And, we're still hoping. I'm hoping that the generations behind me, that they will see a better Guyana, that the whole racial politics will be pushed away. It will be pushed aside. And, a newer generation who is not concerned about people's race, but they're concerned that you're a human. We're all humans, and we all need to fight together for a better country. We want to see our country do justice. And everyone needs to understand that we all have to stand up to injustice and fight for what is right, fight for justice. And whenever I see injustice, I'm going to speak up against it, because if it's not right, we should all say something. We should all try to do something. We should all want to fix the problem.
Absolutely. If it's not right, then we stand up and make it right. And as the late Congressman John said, that at times we got to go out there and ensure that we create good trouble. A lot of people in Guyana, maybe because of their professions, are afraid of good trouble. They are afraid to rock the boat. They have friends in all quarters, and so they don't want to rock the boat. That is why I salute you, attorney Shellen. You're an attorney. You're not saying you're just going to stick to being an attorney and see your clients and make some money and enjoy yourself along with your family. And so you're not saying that. You're seeing that there are issues, there are problems in Guyana, and
I mean, you're correct, Mark. Ever since my days at the University of Guyana, I've seen so much happen in Guyana in terms of injustice. I've seen the whole issue when I was in Guyana with the Black Squad, and I always wondered about that. And even as an attorney, I did work for a little while in Guyana, and I did notice something that which I believe has to change the way those young Black men are treated by the police over there, and the injustice that I've seen to them and the way they're treated when they're taken to the prisons. And even I just remember the situation that recently happened with the young prisoner who was burnt. These are things all of us, we all have to speak up against injustice and wrongdoing.
absolutely. And a lot of people who should be speaking up are afraid. They just don't want to speak up. And then some of them only speak up when things hit them at their doorstep. That's selfishness, and it's sad as to what's happening. Earlier, you did speak about the checks and balances in terms of our governments and three arms. You have the judicial, you have the executive, and you have the legislative. In Guyana, the PPP wants to trample on everything. They want to control every single thing, and it must be stopped by every and any legal means necessary. Mr. J.R. Crawford will give you um, about a minute or so for your closing remarks, because I don't want you to be in that darkness there and mosquitoes start biting you.
Look, Mark, as a citizen of this country, you know, I would like to see where our country has a better reputation where it comes to law and order. We as a nation need to demand from our elected officials that the law is allowed to take its course, and we must be instrumental in making sure that the law is observed and the people of Guyana are being treated with respect. The laws of the country must be obeyed, and we must put the country above our personal needs. And we must, as citizens, work together to make Guyana a better place where we can garner proper respect in the international world. Instead of having us, labeled as this corrupt entity, it's not that we have millions of people here that it's hard to control or to change our behavior. We are less than 1 million people in this country. We have proper foundation. We have great minds that came from this land before. Why can't we do the same again? It's such a sad thing to see that, we don't have all these natural disasters to endure, and the opportunities are not afforded to us to live a better quality of life and to love each other. We are all struggling for the same thing. Indians are hungry, blacks are hungry, but yet we are seeing that some elected governments are only showing favoritism to those who support them. Under the coalition, we saw an umbrella effect where everyone was invited under the umbrella. And we saw our leader then reach out to every ethnic group. And that is how you're supposed to govern a country. You're elected by the people for the people, not for your party followers or your friends and cronies. And the sooner the citizens decide that, hey, we are all in this together, and we come together regardless of race and religion, and hold the leaders that we elect accountable. And if you're not going to do the job right, get you out immediately. And that's the same goes to the petition. Let it be heard. Let's all doubt come out there. The citizens will see who did the rigging and who did not do the rigging. We move on together, put our differences behind us, and go forward as a country.
I think Mark is muted, so
Sorry
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that. We have some people who do read lips as well. But I was saying that I can not disagree with you guys tonight in terms of how the country should move forward. But we have a handful of individuals who are dictating Guyana right now, who are pretending to be talking about one Guyana, are the ones really who do not want to see unity in the country at all. Miss Washington, is always a pleasure to have you on here along with JR. But we cannot give GR a minute and not give you a minute for your closing remarks too. Go right ahead, please.
once again, thank you, Mark, for having me on your show. And once again, I want to thank all of your listeners who faithfully come here every night. I did read some of the comments, and I did also saw someone was asking for my number, which I will tell you again before I close on my remarks. But I want to encourage you, Guyanese, to keep on pressing with the government for them to do what is right. Keep on making noise. Don't stay quiet, because I think one of the ways in which we're going to get anywhere in terms of a country and in terms of unity is by getting up and getting out and making your voices, let your voices be heard. Let your concerns be known. Don't sit quietly and see wrongdoing and not do something. One of the ways where you get social changes is by protesting, by, finding ways to make your voices heard. Getting your concerns out to whether it be, if it's a council representative or whoever is your representative in the city which you live, you have to go out to the town meetings. You have to go out and make your voices be heard. So, if we want changes, we cannot continue to sit down. I know some of you might think we're here, but I think by making noise, by saying something, by speaking up on social media, I think this is part of us doing our part to help. Because I want to see a better Guyana. I want to see a different generation. I want to see the old generation of PPP and whoever else is just inciting racial division in Guyana. I want to see that group of people pass and just move on, and a young, fresh group come in on the scene and speak about unity, try or work towards unity, unifying Guyana. So once again, guys, I just thank you for listening to this program tonight. Thank you for all the support I'm getting. My number, if some of you here would like that number, is 718-877-3100. That's my office number. Again, it's 718-877-3100. I'm on social media, so you could follow me on Facebook. I'm on Facebook under my name that you see there. All right. Again, thank you. And thank you, Mark, for having me again. It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure indeed having our attorney here. Also, Mr. J.R. Crawford, the man who's currently without lights, mosquitoes, all manner of things. I don't know how you guys are making it out. I don't know how you guys. Yeah, I see. I don't know how you guys are making it out there in that village. Village that's very, very close to my heart for so many different reasons. Crawford, thank you so much. But we just hope and we pray that the vindictiveness coming out of this PPP regime would come to an end. We all want it to come to an end by way of having the elections petitions be heard. And we all can see that it is the PPP with that damage and corrupt SOPs. It is the PPP who is afraid of the elections petitions to be heard. It is the PPP who is actually hiding things from even their own supporters. But we already know what they're about. At least at some point in time at the end of the elections petitions hearings, and when we do get victory, and I say we meaning the people, the right-minded people of Guyana who truly believe in democracy, when we do get victory, I promise the two of you, and maybe if I can afford all of our listeners, that I am paying, find a way to pay it. I don't know how, but I'll find a way to pay to take all of you guys for a trip, a 1-week trip to Keene. Yeah. You're listening keenly. Have you heard of any country in Africa or anywhere in the world, guys? Kenya?
Kenya doesn't exist.
Kenya.
In the minds of those people, things exist that do not really exist. Let's pay keen attention to them as we prepare to go to and find where Kenya is. God bless you guys. Thank you as always.
Good night, everyone. Good night, Miss Washington.
Good night, Mr. J.R. Crawford. And
Bye-bye.
good night to all the listeners. Good night, Mark.
Good night. Bye-bye. Mr. Crawford and Miss Shellon Washington there, we all will be going to look for Kenya. Kenya, indeed. All right. I will be back tomorrow, same place, same time. Continue to be strong. God bless you. And God bless our beautiful, beautiful country, Guyana. All the best.
Hello, this is attorney Shellon Washington, owner and founder of the Washington Law Firm, located at 455 Utica Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. We're specialized in medical malpractice, personal injuries, matrimonial law, and landlord and tenant. If you're in need of legal representation, please give us a call today. The number to call is 718-877-3100. Consultation is free at no cost to you. So call us today to see if we can be of any assistance to your legal needs. Again, the phone number to call us is 718-877-3100.
If you are looking to have your statutory declaration, affidavit of income, identity, damage or lost passport, lost license, tenancy agreement, agreement of settlement, power of attorney, last will and testament, and certification of documents, then you need to visit the Alistair Collins firm, located at the Killian Mall, 162 Lamaha Street in Georgetown, between Camp and Waterloo Street. Alistair Collins is a commissioner of oaths and a justice of the peace. Make certain you visit him or call for more information at 649-6410 or 685-6448 or 503-1451. And there's adequate parking available. Go down to the Alistair Collins firm and have all of your legal issues settled and brought to the fore. Alistair Collins firm. Contact them at Alistair Collins firm.
Let's get together. Stop all this fussing and fighting. Let's love one another. You gotta help your mother, help your father, help your brothers, help your sisters, help your neighbors and your friends. We are one people, one nation, one destiny. Everybody, y'all. One people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, yeah. Separated. Now we are free, yeah. That's the way it should be. You gotta help your mother, help your father, help your sister, help your brothers, help your neighbors, and your friends. We are one people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, yeah. One people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, 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 yeah. Ooh. We are one people, one nation, one destiny. Yeah, yeah. One people, one nation, one destiny.